You don't remember when it started? There's no single moment, no clear sentence, just a feeling that followed you everywhere. A quiet sense that something was off. That maybe, just maybe, you were the problem. You smiled when you didn't want to. Said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Learned to be easy, useful, invisible. You were the child who read the air before anyone taught you words, who felt the shift in the room before anyone raised their voice. You noticed the tension your caregivers didn't speak about, and your body translated it into instructions. Don't upset them. Don't take up space. Don't make it worse. And so, you didn't. And the lie didn't sound like a lie. It sounded like love. Like, be good and they'll stay. Don't need too much and they'll love you. Try harder and maybe this time you'll finally feel right. But you never did. 'Cause right kept changing. The target kept moving. And every time you got close, the rules shifted again. And now you're grown and you're still trying. Still chasing something no one ever defined for you. That's the trick. No one told you directly. No one had to. Because children don't need instructions to shape themselves around absence. Shape themselves around whatever makes them feel safe. Even if it means disappearing. Even if it means pretending comfort in places that hurt. You didn't hear the lie. You absorbed it. Into your muscles, your posture, your silence. And it sounded like this. You must earn your place. Not just in the room, in the world. In love, in your own skin. And the worst part? You got so good at it they never even noticed what it cost you. So you adapted. You became helpful, harmless, impressive. You learned to read the room before you learned to read. You stayed quiet when things felt wrong. You laughed when someone mocked you, just to make it easier for them. You praised others so they wouldn't notice how small you felt. You learned to shrink before anyone asked you to. You learned to manage other people's emotions before you could name your own. You smiled when you were scared. You apologized when you were hurt. And they called you mature. They called you easy. They said you were strong, but they never asked what it cost. They never noticed how your comfort came from knowing how to disappear. They never wondered why your compliments always came faster than your feelings. You started thinking love looked like being needed, like staying useful, like having no needs of your own, like being okay so others wouldn't have to worry. And now, every time someone says, "You can rest," something tightens. You don't trust it. You don't believe it. You scan for what they want instead. You wait for the condition, for the fine print, because somewhere deep inside you still think you have to earn the right to exhale. That if you stop moving, someone will notice the real you and walk away. They didn't say earn it. They didn't have to. It was in the way they praised you when you made them proud but went silent when you broke the image. It was in the way love arrived only after performance, after good grades, good manners, good behavior. It was in the shift you felt when you disappointed them, not anger but distance, a quiet withdrawal that hurt more than any punishment. And when it didn't come, you didn't ask why. You asked what more you could do, what part of you still wasn't enough. You thought their approval meant safety, so you kept chasing it. You thought their silence meant you failed, so you tried harder. You performed guilt before anyone asked for it. You fixed things that weren't your fault. You became responsible for everyone's peace just to earn a sliver of warmth, and they called that resilience. They said you were so strong. But you weren't strong. You were scared. Scared that if you took off the mask, you'd disappear. Scared that if you needed something, they'd stop looking at you the same way. Afraid to be seen without a mask on. Afraid that if you stopped performing for 1 second, they'd see the real you and leave. So you kept going. You studied their moods like scripture. You adjusted your tone like a mirror. You became what they needed, hoping that one day someone would finally turn around and say, "You, just as you are enough." But no one ever did. And you never stopped waiting. Not really, not even now. You weren't waiting for love. You were waiting for someone to come back and undo the lie. To look you in the eye and say, "You didn't have to earn it. We were wrong. We just didn't know how to love without conditions." But no one did. No one came. And so you kept offering more of yourself, piece by piece, gesture by gesture, silence by silence, until even you didn't recognize who you were without the giving. You didn't know what you liked, what you wanted, what you felt, only what others needed from you. You learned to measure your value by your impact on others. If they smiled, you were good. If they were distant, something must be wrong with you. If they were happy, you felt like you existed. If they were disappointed, you collapsed inside. Not because you failed, but because the old wound whispered, "See? Still not enough." And it worked. Because it sounded familiar. It felt like home. The tension, the watching, the constant calculating. You didn't learn to love. You learned to adapt, to adjust, to disappear in pleasing ways. You didn't learn safety. You learned hyper-awareness. How to read micro-expressions, how to pre-apologize, how to sense a shift before it erupted. Love was never a place to rest. It was a test you could never pass, a tightrope with no end. And you're still on it, still tiptoeing, still bracing, still hoping someone will finally say, "You can stop now, you're safe." But they don't, because they never saw you running. At some point, they didn't even have to say it anymore. You started saying it for them. Before anyone could judge you, you judged yourself. Before anyone could walk away, you distanced first. You picked up where they left off. You became the one who watched yourself too closely, who replayed every sentence to check if it was too much, who scanned every feeling before it was spoken, just in case it might be inconvenient. You set impossible standards and called them goals. You withheld affection from yourself until a task was done, a mistake erased, a version perfected. You began looking in the mirror and seeing not a person, but a problem to solve. A checklist of flaws, a shape that needed correcting. You didn't just copy their silence, you inherited it, wore it like skin. You absorbed their distance, their conditional warmth, their maybe next time, and you rebranded it, called it discipline, called it emotional intelligence, called it holding yourself accountable. But it wasn't growth. It was self-abandonment in disguise. It was the lie, now fluent in your voice, reflected in your eyes. And the most devastating part? You didn't question it. You believed it was you, that this version, the one that bends, edits, watches, was who you truly were. You forgot there had ever been another voice, one that didn't ask for proof. And the version of you that didn't fit the mold, the one who felt too much, needed too much, asked too many questions, where did they go? You don't remember silencing them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was gradual. It happened every time you were told you were too much, every time your tears made someone uncomfortable, every time your curiosity sounded like disobedience. You shut that version down so early, you don't even remember what they sounded like. You don't remember what they wanted. They became the tension in your shoulders. The nausea before you speak. The tears you blink back so fast no one even sees. You called it being sensitive. You called it anxiety. You called it just the way you are. But it was grief. It was the part of you that still knew something was off, that still wanted to be loved without performing, that still wanted to cry without apologizing, that still wanted to be held without earning it first. But no one showed you how to stay with those feelings, so you buried them. You grew a thick skin, you built a polished exterior, you called it strength, but all it really did was disconnect you. From your wants, from your voice, from yourself. You got so good at being palatable, you forgot how to be whole. And now when someone asks what you want, your mouth opens but nothing comes out. You freeze because you don't know. You've known how to please for so long, you never learned how to just... So you searched for yourself in other people, in how they looked at you, in the curve of their smiles, the tone of their approval, the warmth or absence of their gaze. You studied their reactions like scripture. You made their affection your mirror, their preferences your compass, their needs your purpose. And every time they pulled away, even a little, it didn't just feel like rejection, it felt like erasure, like your shape vanished the moment they stopped seeing it. That's what happens when you've lost the map back to yourself. You cling, You perform. You shapeshift into their comfort, not because you're weak, but because somewhere deep down you still believe that being chosen makes you real, that being needed means being safe. You don't know how to exist without a witness, without someone confirming, yes, you're valid, you're here. That's the inheritance, not just the pain, but the dependency. A nervous system calibrated to others, a selfhood outsourced to approval. So when they pull away, or worse, stay but stop reflecting, you dissolve. And it doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like confirmation. That the lie was right. That without service, you're nothing. That without mirrors, you disappear. So you shrink first. Not because you want to, but because it feels safer than being left behind. You dim your voice, you soften your needs, you laugh at what wounds you, you apologize before you speak, you stay quiet in rooms that feel cold, you smile in silence that scrapes like bone. All so you don't have to feel that silence again, the one that sounds like someone walking away without a sound, the one that smells like your childhood bedroom after an argument, the one that told you you take up too much space, so now you fold yourself smaller. You say yes when your body screams no. You stay where love once was, just in case it comes back. You convince yourself this is generosity, this is loyalty, but underneath, it's fear. A quiet, bone-deep terror that if you stop giving, they'll stop needing, and if they stop needing, what are you even for? That's how the lie survives. It turns love into a transaction, connection into currency, presence into a performance. You think sacrifice means closeness. You think boundaries are betrayal. Because somewhere deep in your wiring, you've come to believe, to be loved, you must disappear. Just a little. You think you're the one being hurt, and you were, but somewhere along the line you picked up their tools, their tone, their coldness. You started using them on yourself, not out loud, but in the quiet, brutal language of your inner voice. You punish your softness, you mock your exhaustion, you rehearse every flaw like evidence in a trial. You call it being realistic, being responsible, but what it really is inherited cruelty. You became your own warden. You enforce rules no one ever explained, but you follow them like law. No rest unless you've earned it, no kindness without a reason, no dreams unless they come with proof. And the worst part? You think this voice is you. You think it's discipline, you call it ambition, but it's just the lie echoing in your own accent. And now, when you try to be gentle with yourself, even for a moment, something clenches, something whispers, don't get comfortable, don't be weak, don't hope too much. And you listen, because it sounds like home, like armor, like survival. But it's not, it's just a loop. A cage you memorized so well you stopped seeing the bars. You start to notice it, the distance between the version of you everyone claps for and the one you quietly buried, and it terrifies you. Because the applause is fading, and the mask is slipping, and you don't know what's underneath. When you're not achieving, not impressing, not fixing, what's left? What do you see when there's no mirror of approval reflecting you back? You thought the noise was the prison? But now you realize the silence is worse. Because in the quiet you hear it, that ache of not knowing who you are without the effort. So you fill it, again, with more doing, more self-repair, more projects, more versions of yourself that look whole from the outside but feel hollow inside. And it never lands. It never fills. You think rest might be the cure. But when you try, your body flinches, your mind races, something inside screams, don't stop, don't disappear, they'll forget you. But maybe it's not them you're afraid of losing. Maybe it's the part of you that never truly arrived. You don't even know what you're running from anymore, you just know that stopping feels like death. Like if you let the silence in for even 1 second, everything you've built will dissolve. You say it's because you're scared of what's buried deep inside, but it's not fear of what's there. It's fear that there might be nothing. That all the effort, all the shape-shifting, all the performing wasn't protecting a self but disguising the absence of one. You've spent your life trying to earn worth from people who never had the authority to give it, trying to impress mirrors that were too cracked to reflect anything clearly. You wore their needs like a costume until the seams tore and you realized you don't know what your own skin feels like. That's the collapse you're afraid of, not emotional pain, but the emptiness that comes when the performance ends and there's no real self to applaud. And maybe that's the truth you've been running from all along. Not rejection, not judgment, but the unbearable question, who am I if I'm not needed? It wasn't your lie. You didn't choose it. You were too young to even know what was being carved into you. But it grew inside you anyway, quietly, relentlessly. It shaped the way you walked into rooms, the way you asked for love with silence instead of words, and now, even though you know better, you still feel it, guiding your decisions, shrinking your voice, holding your joy hostage. And here's the truth no one likes to hear. It's not your fault, but it is your inheritance, and that makes it your responsibility. No one is coming to rewrite the script. No one is coming to unteach the lessons they never meant to teach. The ones who gave you the lie were carrying their own. They didn't know, or they did and couldn't stop, but now it lives in you, and if you're not careful, it will speak through you too. You'll pass it on without meaning to your partner, your child, the friend you love most. That's how these lies live so long, not because they're true, but because we don't stop to name them. So name it. Name the moment you started performing to be worthy. Name the glance that taught you to disappear. Name the quiet agreements you made with yourself to never be too much. And then stop. Don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to forgive it. Just let it sit. Let it sting. Let it breathe in the light for the first time. Because that's how you begin to break the cycle. Not by erasing the pain, but by finally refusing to carry it in silence. You thought healing would be like sunlight, like breathing after being underwater, like the end of something dark, but it's not. It's walking into a room you spent your whole life decorating for someone else, and realizing none of it feels like you. It's touching the walls and wondering when you stop choosing the color. It's peeling off a mask so worn in, you're not sure there's a face beneath it, and the worst part, no one's holding it in place anymore. You are. You're the one showing up as the version they once needed, even when no one's asking for her anymore. You're the one rehearsing lines to be liked, fixing your tone before you even speak, adjusting your shape to avoid rejection that may never come. Not because you want to, but because silence still terrifies you more than performance. Because deep down you believe that if you stop being impressive, you'll become invisible, and maybe no one will stay. Maybe no one ever did. So you hold the lie tighter, because at least it gave you something to hold. But the truth? The silence you fear? Is the only place you'll ever meet the part of you that doesn't owe anyone anything. The part that just is. The voice that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't care if it's understood. You didn't lose that voice. You buried it under approval, and it's still waiting, still breathing, still yours. You don't need to glow up, you don't need to fix your tone, or your timing, or your tears. You don't need to become more palatable, more likable, more anything. You're not a draft that needs editing, you're a person, already written, already enough. What you need is permission, to stop folding, to stop filtering, to stop apologizing for existing in full volume. Start with one unedited sentence, one honest no, one moment where you stay still instead of shrinking. That's how the lie unravels, not with fanfare, not with a breakdown, but in quiet rebellions, in choosing not to smile when something hurts, in letting someone see the version of you that hasn't been softened for approval, the one that's a little raw, a little much, a little too loud for their comfort, and still deserving. That's the hardest thing, not changing into someone better, but believing the unpolished, unfinished, complicated you was never a problem to solve. You'll feel it, the pull to go back, to the version they praised, the quiet one, the pleasing one, the one who dimmed herself just enough to make everyone else comfortable. You'll hear that old voice whisper, "Just be easy. Just be good." And for a moment it'll feel safer than being real. Because being real was never safe, was it? It was what got you overlooked, rejected, left, but this time you'll pause. You'll remember. You weren't too much. You were just surrounded by people who wanted less. You'll remember that the ache wasn't your flaw. It was the cost of trying to fit into rooms that shrank you. So maybe some parts of you will still flinch. That's okay. That's the bruise, not the truth. The truth is, you were never unworthy, just unheard, unmet, unprotected. And now, when that voice returns and says, "You have to earn it," you won't argue with it. You'll just say gently but clearly, "That was never mine." And in that refusal, in that quiet, unwavering return to yourself, that's where the freedom begins.